The galaxy had been watching Earth for centuries, but never really paying attention. The major galactic factions considered humanity a curiosity at best, and a nuisance at worst. The planet was too young, too disorganized, to pose any significant threat. Its technology was still in its infancy, barely able to reach beyond its own moon, while the other races advanced their empires and fought their wars. Humans struggled to survive on a world teetering between progress and destruction. But there was always something about humanity that set them apart. It wasn't their technology or their raw strength, but something more intrinsic, something that could not be measured by the same standards the galaxy used to judge the worth of other species. Humans had something more valuable than weapons. They had a will to endure, a spirit that refused to break even when faced with the most impossible challenges. As the Zerk coalition descended upon Earth, no one expected much of a fight. They saw only a primitive species ripe for conquest, a race that could be crushed with the same ease they had shown when wiping out lesser civilizations. The Zerk were an ancient empire, feared by all. They had never met an enemy they could not defeat. Their warships were vast, their weapons deadly, and their soldiers trained in the arts of domination. But humanity had something the Zerk had never encountered before: the element of surprise. When the Zerk arrived over Earth, the first strike was swift, a series of bombardments that destroyed cities in an instant. People died in their millions. The skies were filled with fire and smoke. As the first wave of invaders landed, the planet trembled under the weight of their invasion. The Zerk took no time to admire their victory. They moved quickly to secure the planet's resources and begin their systematic subjugation of humanity. They saw no resistance and assumed the world would soon bow to their will. Yet what the Zerk did not understand was the complexity of the species they sought to conquer. Humans were not driven by a singular goal or need. They were not a race united by a single purpose. Humanity was fractured across nations, ideologies, and cultures. But in times of crisis, there was something that united them, something that could not be broken: the human desire to survive, to fight for their lives and for the lives of others. When the Zerk destroyed Earth's largest cities, the people didn't cower in fear. Instead, they began to fight in ways the Zerk had never anticipated. The human spirit was not so easily defeated. What the invaders failed to realize was that humanity's power was not in its technology or its military strength, but in its capacity to adapt to change, to survive against all odds. When faced with overwhelming force, humans didn't simply give up. They innovated. They became more resourceful, more determined. As the Zerk marched through the ruined streets of Earth, humanity's greatest weapon was revealed not in the form of lasers or warships, but in the form of people fighting together, using whatever they could find to resist what they had lost: their cities, their homes, their families, but not their will to fight. And that was something the Zerk had failed to prepare for. The galaxy had underestimated humanity's true danger, not in their technology or power, but in their ability to never give up. As the Zerk forces moved deeper into Earth, the humans revealed a resilience that no one had expected. The first wave of their attacks had been successful in overwhelming Earth's defenses, but the Zerk did not account for the human capacity to adapt. When faced with destruction in the ruins of fallen cities, pockets of resistance formed spontaneously, groups of survivors from different nations coming together to fight not just for their homes, but for the future of their species. The Zerk believed that humanity would crumble under their invasion. They thought that with their superior numbers and weapons, the fight would be over before it truly began. But instead, they found themselves facing an enemy who refused to be broken. They underestimated the human will to survive. The fight was no longer about cities or military strength. It became a war of survival, a war where every human knew they had to rely on more than their technology. They had to rely on each other. In every city that fell, humans turned their despair into defiance. They didn't just fight with guns or knives. They fought with cleverness and cunning. They used the Zerk's overconfidence against them. The enemy's own arrogance became their greatest weakness. While the Zerk expected a predictable response from Earth's military forces, humans began using guerrilla tactics. They attacked from unexpected angles, using the terrain to their advantage, learning quickly how to turn the Zerk's overwhelming power into a vulnerability. In the chaos of war, new leaders began to emerge from the streets. From the ashes of devastation, men and women who had never been soldiers became commanders, leading groups of resistance fighters with a determination that was unmatched. Their strategy was simple but effective. They were not trying to win in the conventional sense. They were trying to survive long enough to outlast the invaders, and each small victory added fuel to the fire of resistance. The Zerg forces quickly learned that this was not going to be the easy conquest they had anticipated. Instead of breaking the human spirit, the invasion seemed to do the opposite. It fueled their drive to fight back. At every turn, humanity found new ways to fight, from improvised explosive devices to hacking into the Zerg's communication systems to disrupt their commands. It was clear that humans could not be defeated by sheer force alone. The Zerg had thought that once their weapons were unleashed, humanity would bend to their will, but instead the invaders found themselves at the mercy of their enemies' resourcefulness. The more they pushed, the more the humans adapted and fought back. The Zerg began to realize that their initial assumption about humanity had been wrong. Their greatest weapon wasn't their technology or military prowess, but their sheer unpredictability. The world was a battlefield, and humanity was learning quickly that their strength was not in their ability to wage war, but in their ability to survive and fight, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. As each day passed, the Zerg could see that they were not dealing with a species that would be easily conquered. They were dealing with a species that would do anything to protect its existence. The Zerg were now facing an enemy that they could not understand, and every day humanity proved just how dangerous they truly were. The Zerg had underestimated humanity's adaptability, and that mistake began to cost them dearly. As the battle dragged on, the humans learned to use their environment in ways the Zerg couldn't comprehend. Abandoned cities became strongholds. Guerrilla fighters set traps using the Zerg's own technology against them, and underground networks grew in strength to coordinate these strikes. Humanity was proving to be a more dangerous opponent than the Zerg ever imagined. But humanity's true weapon was not just in their resourcefulness, it was in their unity and determination. The human spirit was a force that could not be broken, and as the war continued, it became clear that humanity was not fighting for survival alone. They were fighting for each other. They fought for their families, their friends, their homes. They fought for the future. While the Zerg focused on military conquest, humanity's greatest leaders were not generals or soldiers. They were scientists, engineers, and thinkers, people who had spent their lives advancing human knowledge and innovation. In secret, these brilliant minds had been quietly preparing for a day like this, when humanity would need more than just brute strength to survive, when they would need to outthink their enemies. Humanity's secret weapon lay in a project known only as Elysium, a group of the world's brightest minds who had developed a unique form of psychological warfare that would give humanity an edge against the Zerg. It wasn't a weapon that could destroy ships or shatter armies. It was something far more dangerous. It could break the Zerg's mental resolve. The key to humanity's success was simple. The Zerg were not accustomed to empathy. They had no concept of the bonds that humans shared with one another, the strength of family or friendship or love. The Zerg's own species had been built on survival of the fittest, but humanity's strength was rooted in something different. It was rooted in connection, in the ability to fight not just for survival, but for the people they loved. Elysium's breakthrough was a psychological tactic designed to exploit this very weakness. Humanity had developed a way to send messages directly into the minds of the Zerg commanders, messages that would make them question their loyalty, their sense of duty to the Empire. It wasn't a form of mind control, but a form of doubt, something that could make the Zerg question their purpose and their cause. The first successful deployment of this weapon was an unexpected success. As the Zerg forces began to falter in key battles, the human resistance noticed a shift in the Zerg's command structure. It wasn't just the guerrilla attacks or the traps, it was the growing confusion and hesitation among the Zerg's leadership. They were no longer as confident as they once were, and it didn't take long for the humans to exploit this newfound weakness. But while humanity celebrated this small victory, they knew the war was far from over. The Zerg would not retreat easily, and they would adapt quickly to these new tactics. The battle for Earth had become a war of wills, a war of not just weapons, but ideas, and humanity was learning that in this fight they could rely on more than just their guns and their bombs. They could rely on their minds and their hearts. As humanity's forces regrouped and planned their next moves, they knew the true test was still ahead. The Zerg might have been shaken, but they were not defeated, and the fight for Earth had only just begun. As the war dragged on, the Zerg found themselves in unfamiliar territory. They had spent centuries conquering worlds, but humanity had turned their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The Zerg had underestimated how quickly a species could learn and adapt to the chaos of battle. What they thought was a quick conquest had turned into a prolonged nightmare. The human resistance had grown stronger by the day. Not only were they using advanced technology against the Zerg, but they were also learning how to exploit the psychological cracks that had begun to appear in the invaders' ranks. The Zerg commanders, who once moved with absolute certainty, now found themselves second-guessing their decisions and questioning the very purpose of their war. Their once unified front had started to splinter. The turning point came when a new type of resistance emerged. It wasn't just the underground militias or the scattered groups of soldiers anymore. Humanity had united in a way no one could have predicted. All across the world, from the ruins of major cities to the quiet countryside, individuals began to form small pockets of self-sufficient communities. They grew their own food, repaired old machines, and used their knowledge of the land to outsmart the Zerg's technological superiority. These human communities became hubs of innovation and resistance. They were able to develop new tactics and strategies that the Zerg had not encountered before. They would use distractions and misdirection to draw the Zerg forces away from key targets, only to ambush them with precision strikes. In the process, humanity's ability to adapt to any situation, no matter how dire, became a defining characteristic of their resistance. The Zerg, in their arrogance, could not comprehend how these small scattered groups could come together and form such a formidable force. They believed the humans to be disorganized and weak, but they underestimated the power of unity. Humanity had always been fragmented by politics and culture, but now, in the face of extinction, all those differences had faded away. What remained was a singular purpose: to fight back against the invaders. At the heart of this new movement was the formation of a galaxy-wide alliance between humans and other species that had long been oppressed by the Zerg Empire. Humanity's struggles had sparked a fire of rebellion across the galaxy. Races that had once been subject to the Zerg's rule now joined the humans in their fight against the Empire. The Zerg had been too focused on their conquest of Earth to notice the growing unrest among their own subjects. These new allies brought with them resources and expertise that enhanced humanity's efforts. Now, not only were humans fighting back on Earth, but they were also fighting across the stars in coordination with their new allies. The Zerg Empire, once thought to be unshakable, was now crumbling under the weight of this unexpected rebellion. Humanity's role in the galaxy had changed. They were no longer a primitive species in need of protection. They were now leaders of a revolt that threatened the very foundations of the Zerg Empire. Humanity had tapped into something far more powerful than any weapon the Zerg had ever seen. Unity was now their greatest strength, and with it, they began to turn the tide of war. The Zerg, faced with an ever-growing enemy that they could not defeat with brute force alone, began to falter. Their plans began to unravel, and the galaxy started to realize that humanity, once dismissed as insignificant, was now the catalyst for a revolution that could reshape the universe forever. As humanity's fight continued, the Zerg began to realize they had made a grave mistake. They had assumed that their technology and military power would be enough to crush the humans, but what they had overlooked was the depth of humanity's spirit. The Zerg could not understand how a species so divided by politics and culture could come together and fight as one. They had underestimated the power of shared purpose and the strength that came from protecting those they loved. Humanity had learned quickly that they could not win this war through force alone, no matter how advanced their technology was or how many soldiers they sent into battle. The Zerg were simply too powerful on that front. But humanity had something the Zerg could never replicate: a will to survive, a desire to protect one another, and the ability to outthink their opponents. Instead of continuing to fight on the Zerg's terms, humanity adapted their strategy. They shifted from relying solely on military might to using their greatest asset, creativity, in every corner of the world. Scientists, engineers, and strategists worked tirelessly to develop new ways of fighting the war. They harnessed the collective power of humanity's mind to create unexpected solutions that baffled the Zerg at every turn. The Zerg had expected humanity's resistance to break under pressure, but instead it flourished. It grew stronger with each passing day as the humans forged new alliances with species across the galaxy who had also suffered under the Zerg's rule. Humanity's influence spread far and wide, and soon their revolt became more than just a fight for Earth. It became a revolution for freedom across the stars. The human resistance quickly turned into a vast network of united forces, each faction bringing something unique to the table. They fought not only with weapons, but with ideas that could break the Zerg's control over entire worlds. They formed secret communication channels using the Zerg's own technology to infiltrate their ranks and deliver crucial intelligence to resistance cells across the galaxy. The galaxy's oppressed species began to rally behind humanity in ways the Zerg could not predict. As humans fought for the liberation of their planet, they fought for the liberation of others. Humanity's war had become a symbol of resistance, a symbol of hope for those who had lived under the Zerg's tyranny for centuries. The Zerg had always relied on fear to maintain their empire, but humanity was showing them something different. They were showing the galaxy that hope was a far more powerful weapon than fear could ever be, and it was a weapon that the Zerg could not defeat. The more the Zerg pushed back against humanity, the more the resistance grew stronger. They could not break humanity's spirit, no matter how hard they tried. And as the battle lines shifted across the galaxy, the Zerg were forced to reconsider their strategy. They had always been conquerors, but humanity was teaching them that there was more to war than subjugation. There was a power in freedom that no empire could ever understand. Humanity had not only become the driving force behind the liberation of the galaxy, but they had also become the moral compass of the universe, showing that no matter how powerful an empire might be, it could never crush the will of those who fought for something greater than themselves. As the Zerg Empire began to crumble under the pressure of humanity's unrelenting resistance, they were forced to change their tactics. But it was clear to everyone that the Zerg could no longer win this war. With sheer force alone, their once unstoppable warships were no longer as intimidating. Their commanders were no longer confident in their decisions, and the cracks in their empire grew wider with each passing day. Humanity's strategic brilliance was now evident to the entire galaxy as they rallied their newfound allies into action. The war was no longer confined to Earth. It had become a galaxy-wide struggle for freedom. Humanity's ability to inspire other oppressed species to rise against their oppressors was unmatched. Even those races that had once feared the Zerg now joined the fight, and together they'd formed a united front that the Zerg could not defeat. The once powerful Zerg military began to falter. They had been trained for wars of conquest and domination, not for a protracted resistance from an enemy. They had underestimated the humans' ingenuity became their greatest weapon. They continued to strike from the shadows, launching surprise attacks on the Zerg's supply lines and communications networks. Humanity's ability to outmaneuver their enemies on both a tactical and strategic level made the Zerg nervous. But what made the Zerg truly uneasy was not just the tactical brilliance of humanity. It was the strength of the alliances they had forged. These were not just a collection of different species fighting for survival. They were a united front, born from a shared belief in freedom and the right to live without fear of tyranny. Humanity had sparked a revolution across the galaxy, a revolution that was beginning to gain unstoppable momentum. The Zerg Empire, once the most feared force in the galaxy, had become a shell of its former self. Its warships were being ambushed by humans, and their allies. Its supply lines were stretched thin, and its commanders were losing faith in their ability to hold on to their power. The Zerg had never faced an enemy quite like this before, one that fought not just with weapons, but with heart and soul, with the belief that they could make a difference. As the Zerg were pushed back on every front, they realized that their previous approach to the war had been flawed. They had seen themselves as the rightful rulers of the galaxy, but they had failed to understand the true nature of the beings they sought to dominate. The Zerg had always relied on control and fear, but humanity was showing them that the true power of an empire came not from domination, but from unity and cooperation. The Zerk began to retreat, but they could not escape the consequences of their actions. Humanity's rise had shifted the balance of power in the galaxy. The idea of freedom had taken root in every corner of the universe, and no matter how hard the Zerk tried to fight back, they could not extinguish it. Humanity had lit a spark that would burn for generations to come. The Zerk Empire was no longer a threat, but the war was not over yet. Humanity and their allies had learned that while the Zerk may have been beaten, their legacy of oppression and tyranny could still linger across the stars, and as long as that threat remained, humanity would not stop until the galaxy was free from the chains of the Zerk's rule. As the Zerk Empire retreated from their once conquered worlds, a new chapter began to unfold across the galaxy. Humanity and their allies had proved that a force for freedom could rise from the ashes of devastation. The galaxy, once under the iron grip of the Zerk, was now awakening to the possibility of a future without tyranny. With the fall of the Zerk's strongholds, humanity and their newfound allies began to rebuild what had been destroyed. They worked together to create new governments based on the ideals of unity and cooperation. The old divisions that had once separated them were now being replaced with shared values and a common purpose. The galaxy was beginning to heal, but there was still much work to be done. In the wake of their victory, humanity had become more than just the spark of rebellion. They had become the torchbearers of a new era. Their message of hope and freedom resonated throughout the galaxy, and soon former enemies of the Zerk Empire began to join their cause. Those who had once stood by as the Zerk destroyed planets and enslaved species now found themselves fighting for the future of the galaxy alongside humanity. But despite the victory, humanity knew that peace was fragile. They had liberated the galaxy from one tyrant, but the universe was vast and filled with many unknowns. The forces of oppression that had supported the Zerk Empire were not easily extinguished, and remnants of the old order still lurked in the shadows. The people of the galaxy were free, but they were not safe. Humanity's leaders understood that the war against tyranny was never truly over. They had to remain vigilant to protect the freedom they had fought so hard to secure. In the years following the Zerk's retreat, humanity focused their efforts on creating a new galactic alliance, one where every species had a voice and a stake in the future. No longer would the galaxy be ruled by fear and oppression. It would be guided by the collective will of its people. New councils were formed, with representatives from all races and cultures, to ensure that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. Humanity's influence was instrumental in shaping this new order. Their experience in resisting the Zerk had taught them invaluable lessons about leadership and the power of unity. It was humanity's vision that helped build a foundation for lasting peace across the stars. But even as the galaxy began to rebuild, there were those who would seek to take advantage of the power vacuum left by the Zerk's fall. Not every race was content with the new order, and some believed that the galaxy could only be ruled through strength, not unity. Those who had once bowed to the Zerk now plotted in the shadows, hoping to restore the old ways of conquest and subjugation. Humanity, however, was determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. They had learned that strength lay not in domination, but in the power of cooperation and shared values. The human spirit had proven to be a force capable of overcoming even the most impossible odds, and now, with the galaxy united under a common cause, they would stand together to ensure that the horrors of the Zerk Empire would never rise again. The road ahead was uncertain, but humanity knew one thing for sure: they would not rest until the galaxy was free for all its inhabitants. No one would ever again underestimate the true power of humanity. The galaxy had begun to rebuild itself in the years following the fall of the Zerk Empire, but as the dust settled, humanity knew that the fight for peace was far from over. While the Zerk were gone, the remnants of their influence still haunted the far corners of the universe. Factions that had once served under their command continued to resist the new order, plotting to restore the days of conquest. Humanity's role in this new age of peace was clear. They had to be the guardians of the galaxy's future, ensuring that no single force could ever dominate again. The new Galactic Alliance, formed in the wake of the Zerk's defeat, was built on ideals of equality, freedom, and shared governance. Humanity, having once been an oppressed species, knew the importance of giving every race and species a voice in the new galaxy. With the support of their allies, they created a system where no one could rise to power unchecked, and where the horrors of the past would never repeat themselves. But peace, as humanity had learned, was fragile. Old grudges lingered, and not everyone embraced the vision of a peaceful galaxy. Some species, embittered by years of oppression under the Zerk, felt resentment toward those who had once been their enemies. These tensions simmered beneath the surface, threatening to fracture the fragile alliance that humanity had worked so hard to establish. As the years passed, there were whispers of a new uprising. Rogue factions, disillusioned by the new galactic order, began to sow seeds of rebellion. Some sought to restore the power that the Zerk had once held, while others simply wanted to impose their own vision of the galaxy's future. Humanity, having faced oppression once before, could not afford to be complacent. They knew that the fight for peace was not just about winning battles, but about maintaining the principles they had fought for. Humanity's leaders, now respected across the galaxy, understood that their role was not just as warriors, but as diplomats, peacemakers, and mediators. They worked tirelessly to maintain the delicate balance that held the galaxy together. They knew that the future would not be shaped by war, but by cooperation. Humanity had shown that they were capable of standing up against overwhelming odds, and now, their greatest challenge was ensuring that the galaxy would never return to the days of tyranny. As time went on, humanity's influence in the galaxy only grew. Their reputation as a species capable of great resilience, ingenuity, and unity became legendary. They became the symbol of hope for countless civilizations, proving that no matter how dire the situation, unity and strength of purpose could overcome any obstacle. Yet, humanity was not blind to the challenges ahead. There would always be those who sought to disrupt the peace, who wished to impose their will on others. But humanity had learned from their past. They had learned that true power did not lie in domination, but in the strength of shared ideals. They knew that as long as they remained united, no force could ever break their will. The galaxy would not forget the sacrifices humanity had made to bring about this new era. They had been underestimated, but now, they were the guardians of the future. They stood as a beacon of hope, showing the galaxy that no matter the odds, even the most fragile and broken species could rise to shape the future of the stars. Humanity's true danger was not in their weapons, but in their unwavering spirit, and it was a spirit that would never fade.